Welcome to Go Kaiju Show, where we have a healthy obsession with kaiju, and we are the longest-running kaiju podcast thus far. I am your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. What's going on, peeps?
We are back visiting Ginga in Ultraman Ginga S. We are covering the series, which went 16 episodes, and we are covering the two movies. Ultraman Ginga S, the movie, Showdown, the 10 Ultra Brothers, if I remember that subtitle correctly.
Or just Ginga S, the movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to be complete here. Yeah. And then the other and final movie we're going to cover is Ultra Victory Fight.
Victory. Or Ultra Fight Victory.
But he's called Ultraman Victory. Why would you split up his name?
Well, it's because it's called Ultra Fight Victory.
Anyway.
Yeah.
The Japanese have to complicate this, I guess. All right, but before we do that, a quick thing here. We are doing one more show before Jason goes MIA. Jason is going to visit Japan, and he's going to broadcast hours upon hours of video live from there. So he's going to take us everywhere with him. And
I don't think that's not going to really happen.
No, that's not going to happen. But he is going to visit the land and home of Godzilla for a while. And then he is coming back sometime in May. And then what we're going to do is resume, late May, early June is when we're going to resume?
I probably might say June-ish, kind of beginning of June, because I'll be coming back home before Memorial Day. So I think there'll probably be some time left, but I'm not entirely sure if it stretches on that week.
So you're staying there for about a whole month?
It's exactly 18 days. I'll be leaving on
2.5 weeks.
Yeah, so I'll be flying out there on the 6th.
Okay. And so our next podcast is going to be April 11th. That final one that we're going to do for a while is going to be Attack of the Super Monsters. We're doing that movie. That's based off of the series Dinosaur War Eisenborg. Basically what they did is took numerous clips from that mini-series. I think it ran, don't quote me on this, I haven't done any research yet. I used to know this, but I think it was something like 12 episodes or however long it was, and then they kind of mishmashed them together to make a film. So we're going to cover the actual movie of that. We would have done another episode later in April, but then I'm out of town. So I'm out of town in late April, and so basically you are going like a month and a half without us. I'm so sorry. I think you'll survive. No,
but I'll at least make sure to have all of the episodes up to date before I leave, so I should have some time left, because I know I'll be kind of finalizing all my trip stuff here by mid-April and just kind of start packing, getting things rounded up by the middle of April and get things all said and done and do some last-minute things beforehand, so...
All right. So before we get into Ultraman Ginga S, Jason, the usual housekeeping.
Yes, if you see a subscribe button down below, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. Smash the like button, and you can preview all of our video and audio episodes at the following streaming channels that you see down below. And you can see both video and audio versions of our episodes at our own website at gogokaijushow.com.
All right. So Ultraman Ginga S, the series, 16 episodes. Basically just like any other Ultraman series. There is some evil shenanigans going on. This time the main alien villain is Alien Chibol. He is the main villain up until the final episode and a half, where where Dark Lugiel comes back. I got quite a bit to say on that. And and so Ultraman Ginga is teamed up with Ultraman Victory, a brand new Ultraman here, and that is played by the character Show. And then they end up eventually saving the day. And then we got a couple movies. So, all right. So let's dive into it. I will say, though, with Ultraman Ginga S, there definitely is a budget this time. And so we get some, more times than not, there are a few exceptions. More times than not, we get some more intricate, slightly bigger set pieces. They actually can put in crowds periodically as well when aliens, kaiju, whatever you want to call them, actually attack at various points. So there's that. I think the effects work more times than not. Hits very well, too. Yeah. So my final ranking on this.
And one thing I would like to add is that the story is much better this time around. And when I was going through and what I was thinking yesterday, with how the whole series was going through, it's like you can almost just say that you can just entirely skip the Ultraman Ginga, the one that came before this one, and you don't really need to know anything from that show necessarily, because it may dabble in a couple of the characters maybe once or twice, and then some callbacks to that, but ultimately you can just completely skip Ultraman Ginga show previously and just get into this one. And it's just with the story and the characters, they're much more developed this time around compared to the previous schlop or whatever you want to call that one. And the villains are much more intricate in a way, and the supporting cast, they're not as annoying compared to a couple of the other ones in this one. And the main character, Hikaru, he seems much more capable in this one, much knowledgeable, and just
he's not as punchable.
Or not quite as good.
Yeah, because there were moments in the original Ginga series I was thinking to myself, I would just love to smack you if I was in that scene with you right now, because you're very annoying and pretentious. Here, he's definitely more tolerable. And I want to answer something out of the gate, and I know a lot of people out there who have not seen this series are wondering, hey guys, are the Spark Dolls back? Unfortunately, they are. However, I will say this. Unlike last show, which was almost like
commercialized,
this enormous 12-episode commercial for toys, this one still kind of does that, but it's nowhere near as blatant. You still get the Spark Dolls, but they are not as prominent here as they were in Ginga.
Or I would say they're more sort of like a backdrop, but also just kind of a tool in order to achieve certain powers and stuff. And this is the point where like the whole future Ultraman series kind of get to this point where most of that kind of that toys, you'll probably see like the tools and medallions and all that stuff for future episodes. You'll tend to see them in episode by episode, but they're just going to be more or less just like tools, and just kind of, just see what they do and how they work. But then like during commercial breaks and stuff in Japan, when shown on TV, they'll at least advertise some of these sort of things as actual toys. But yeah, they're not going to be as the shows aren't going to be as commercialized towards these certain things like Ginga was.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a little irritating at first when you start this series, because especially if you're coming off of Ginga, like we were. I was still kind of annoyed at that, but then as I went along through the series, I realized they were not as front and center here as they were in the last show. So that was nice. This is definitely more story-centric this time around. But again, like the fight choreography, I think is a lot better in this show too. I think the moves and what they do with some of the kaiju and the suits and what they do with Ginga and Victory is definitely more impressive and a bit more complex in execution than what they did the last time around as well.
Yeah, and then speaking of the fight choreography and everything, as far as the monster selection within the show, it's much more varied in a way and kind of suited per episode in a way. And then also, it's like you don't get like some of the annoying things like with the previous series where you had issues with certain characters or something. You don't really see that much at all. Maybe in, I would say, at least one episode here compared to about half of the episodes where you see most of that. And then as far as the suits and everything, Ultraman Victory suit, I think it's a more unique sort of suit of an Ultraman that you don't typically see, particularly the helmet part, because it's like I don't
Almost looks like a crown.
sort of in a way. And I like how they integrate the V in certain spots, like the helmet part there, kind of right in the middle, and then his kind of the light indicator is part of that too, and even some of his beam, like, and I think some of the wristbands that he has kind of has that the V thing, and then towards his ankles and everything, and as well as his visual effect kind of beams in a way where they kind of are V shaped in a way. I think it's
kind of silly, but it is what it is.
I mean, that's Japan for you. They kind of give you those unique, creative ways and how they do things over there. But yeah, it's a pretty good one. And then as far as some of the visual effects, yeah, you're going to tend to see some like those green screen sort of scenes. You're going to see a lot of that, like in some of the YouTube specials that they do. Like you'll see quite a bit of those green screen type of scenes there. Some of them may have aged a little bit. You can kind of nitpick a little bit on it, but I don't think it's aged quite yet. But I mean, it's good for the time period that it was in. Obviously, as time goes on, it gets better. I'll just leave it at that. But were you going to say something?
You want to talk about bad green screen, and we'll get to it. Ultra Fight Victory. Whew.
Yeah.
Whew. that was made like what, a while after that. Yeah, and that's newer than this show. Yeah. And yet somehow we'll get to it. One of the things though I want to discuss though is the trajectory of the writing of this show, because when I started watching this, I kind of was a little skeptical because, again, I was not a fan of Ultraman Ginga, the show. And so, again, I saw the Spark Dolls. I was kind of annoyed with that. And I'm like, oh, great. Here we go again. But then we got a couple episodes in. I'm like, okay, I think I kind of have a general idea of not just what this is about, but kind of how they're going to handle most of the series. And then we kind of go through a few more episodes. And I would say by episode 6, I started thinking to myself, what do I think of it so far when compared to Ginga? Because 6 episodes into Ginga S is halfway through original Ginga. And so I thought to myself, how would I compare the two at this moment in time? And I thought to myself, definitely Ginga S is better. But even then at that point, 6 episodes in, I thought to myself, I am not sure that if the show continues the way that it's going, this is one I will revisit. again down the road, but I kept an open mind. I'm going, I still have 10 more episodes left. This thing could change. We'll just kind of see how it goes. But if the series ended here, I would say probably wouldn't watch again. It's still better than Ginga. It would be fine. Starting around episode 9 or 10 is kind of when there was a shift in the writing. When you think of some of the Ultraman shows, at least I definitely do, I think of some of the older ones where you have organizations like the Science Patrol in there. You get an organization like that here called the UPG. It's Ultra
Party Group.
Party Group or something. I know it's Ultra something Group. And I don't remember the name because they only mentioned it once or twice throughout the whole series.
It's called Ultra Party Guardians.
Ultra Party Guardians. Okay, I stand corrected. But you get that group here, and for most of like this, episodes leading up to about 9 or 10, I thought to myself, the UPG is pretty worthless. They aren't doing much. They're not really as engaged as like a Science Patrol was with the original series.
I'll add this in. I probably would say this is, as far as I can remember, when watching the Ultra series here, I think this is probably the very first show that I've seen when an agency seems to be newly created because they were currently in the middle of building this headquarters that they had. And I think it was kind of throughout towards, I think, episode 9 and 10 when it seemed pretty complete in a way, because you can see that they were like in some of the shots where it seemed like it was incomplete, but they had a sort of a framework, but they were still kind of functioning while the whole construction of this base was still going on.
I guess that's true, yeah. But then once you get to episode 9, 10, kind of in there, UPG actually becomes more involved, and so do some of the characters, including the head of the UPG. The storytelling gets better. The stakes actually start to rise, and it's more engaging, because there's sort of this period where I kind of wonder if the writers for this particular show are like, okay, well, the network ordered 16 episodes. We got to somehow stretch this out. So it was sort of this just kind of formulaic storytelling for a while. And like I was saying, by the time I got to episode 6, I'm like, it's fine, but unless something changes, I'm not sure if this is something I'm going to ever come back to. Well, then once things started changing around episode 9 or 10, it got better. The series, I think, definitely got better from there all the way to the end. And that's something I really appreciate about this show that Ginga did not do. And I remember one of my complaints about Ginga was that there really was no true escalation. Things just sort of happened. And again, because of the smaller budget, shit was so limited. Things just were not great with that series. Here they had more of a budget. They had, the more money to put in more intricate sets, more miniatures and stuff of that sort. And as a result, the writing got better as well. And okay, you want to say something?
And the other thing is that they had kind of this sort of, you could maybe say, middle villain or sort of a main villain in Cheeble there, where at least he was kind of there almost throughout the entire series, up until I think the second to last episode there, where he seemed to be a bit more competent in what he was doing and as far as some of his plans there, and then up until episode 8, where he comes up with this body that's combined into 5 monsters, which I think
That's really cool.
I think it was
I got it written down.
Where I think it was episode 7 where pretty much all those 5 monsters were facing off Ultraman, Ginga, and Victory, or I think it was throughout episode by episode. It was kind of leading up to episode 7 or 8, where I think it was they called this monster 5 Kings or something.
At the end of 7 was when that happened.
Yeah, and he used that as kind of a vessel for him to control and kind of get. Cheeble was trying to have a plan of trying to have the strongest body in the universe, so he kind of used these individual monsters to create the specific 5 Kings monster to become the strongest in the universe. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And then he had another plan. I think his master plan was to revive Dark Lugiel, which for whatever reason he was in
on the moon.
Like he was stored in the moons for whatever reason.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, because I don't think I remember in Ultraman Ginga where he was like punched so far into space where he cratered into the moon or something.
Yeah, that's just a weird what the hell, but whatever.
Yeah. So he was going to use Dark Lugiel for himself to control and to be the strongest in the universe. That way, he sort of did. In was it in the third to last or second to last episode, where he this monster that sort of looked like him in the way and kind of fused with the UPG base there with that Victorium beam cannon there in the base. Go ahead.
I forgot to mention, like, one of the central focuses of this whole series is this element called Victorium. Yeah. And it's underground, basically like right under Tokyo there. It's
supposed to be
in this underground world.
Source. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mana, speaking of which, there's a cyborg we haven't even discussed here, which whatever. I don't know if it's worth talking about much, but
her original name was 10, but then once she
10, yeah.
Pushed aside by Cheeble there and became more of an ally towards the humans and stuff. She was then called by Mana via Misuzu there in one of the episodes. I think it was episode 9. Yeah.
But this Victorium is part of this underground world's life source. And that's where Show comes from. Show is Ultraman Victory. He's got the queen there. Her name is Kirsa, I think, if I remember correctly.
Let me get the...
It starts with a K. I know that for a fact. And so Victorium is kind of the life source of this underground community. And Cheeble wants the Victorium to not only use it to control his aliens to take over the planet, but to help him gain power for the Dark Lugiel body so he can inhabit it eventually.
Yeah, so the gal's name, that's the queen of the Victoriums, there is Queen Kisara. And the other thing I want to add here, we do get a familiar face this time in Yasuke Saito, which you might remember him being, was it the professor and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla? He appears in this.
It was connected with the Mafia.
Yeah, he's part of the Victorium type of race in the underground called Kamushin.
He doesn't really do a whole lot, though, most of the time. He basically just stands there and once in a great while has a couple words to say.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this is kind of one of his final handfuls of things that he does before he unfortunately passed away 6 years later.
Man, you keep like bumming me out. You told me yesterday about that one actor, and I'm just like, damn it. But on to goofier stuff. UPG members Arisa and Goki I got to talk about them for a moment. They love their electric vehicle and
the Nissan Leaf.
Hooking up their guns to like the battery pack of the car or whatever and using them as guns. It's the dumbest thing.
and then also
hook it up.
And then also charging up the entire base with just that Nissan Leaf. I think it was in episode 1 or 2 when they did that. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
I'm like, why not have the base out of that stupid car? And it's so stupid because they're like pew-pewing at massive kaiju. You know how they always make fun of in some of these Western movies where, hey, they even did it in Independence Day where they were like, hey, don't take your pistols and shoot at the massive alien spaceship. Well, Arisa and Goki are hooking up what I call their gas guns because it looks like they're pumping up gas. They're hooking up their little pistols, which are hoses, to this battery compartment or whatever of their vehicle, and they're shooting kaiju. I'm like, oh dear God, this is dumb. Like, this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen.
And then especially it's like if once they charge up their type of beams or whatever, it's like, how are you going to dodge that? And then like, what if it targeted the Nissan Leaf there? It's like, you're pretty much SOL.
Yeah. And it's so ridiculous. And there was sort of a period where they kind of abandoned it, and then they went back to it even more later in the series. I'm like, no, I thought we were done with this. and then the also kind of goofy thing with the show here is that kind of at the I think it was the final episode where was it Hikaru was saying that he can transform into Ginga one last time, or was it Ginga mentioned that to him? And then of course he transforms into him, but then it's like transforms into him again maybe a few so more times. It's like that's the only goofy thing with the whole story writing. And it's like, go ahead. You're misunderstanding that, because you're right in that he can only transform one more time, but what they did was they showed you Ginga and Victory fighting that Lugiel mech that we did not see from the end of episode 15 to the beginning of 16, because the beginning of 16, they already turned back into their human selves and a decent chunk of the city has been destroyed. Because I remember going into episode 16 going, they gypped us out of a fight. What the fuck? And no, what they did in part of that episode was that part of that was a flashback of showing Victory and Ginga fighting that mech before the actual beginning of episode 16, which we started on. So that was that part. But yeah, there's a lot that I want to kind of wait to get to that part.
And then one of the episodes where Chigusa comes into play, forget which episode that was, and then you have Goki just kind of like just being a fangirl. All of a sudden, there's like, oh dear God.
That's not the greatest part of the episode. The greatest part of the episode is what I call the hot dog kaiju. Is that alien who originally was supposed to work for controlling the planet, where they were supposed to use like these little glow sticks that when people shake them, it's supposed to make everyone more angry and aggressive and then turn on one another. Well, then he started listening to Chigusa's music and he fell in love with her. So he became one of her major groupies. He turns into a human called the Mr. Tambourine. And so he does this funny little like dance, and
they do that for like some of those type of concerts that they'll do those glow sticks and everything. So,
but even he does it a little bit later, and I just have to say, it's so stupid, but I love it. I'm like, the design of this kaiju is hilarious, but his personality and his dance moves with these glow sticks, I'm loving this. It's stupid, but I love it. It's so entertaining. I have a stupid grin on my face when I watch it because I'm going, it's funny, entertaining. Like it's you have to see it to believe it. It's great.
But I will tell you that this one sentient kaiju they called the so-called hot dog kaiju and stuff, you'll see him in future series and stuff.
I hope so. Like I loved him. I loved him in this. I go, this is so dumb, but I'm loving it because it's absolutely amazing. One thing I want to get off my shoulders here, and I might have talked about this with Ginga perhaps, and this is a problem that we see a lot in tokusatsu, and I think we see it even more in contemporary tokusatsu. And we see it a couple times in the Godzilla saga, and we definitely saw it at the end of Gamera too, where it's this ability for our heroes to gain and receive power and abilities that continue to make them stronger than they once were. So when Ultraman Taro gave Ginga this wrist attachment to transform himself into Ginga Strium, and the ability to acquire abilities from various Ultramen, I groaned, because bullshit like this always ends up eliminating stakes of the show or movie in question, because we, the audience, know damn well that the hero cannot and will not be defeated. And I find it to be one of the biggest cop-outs of storytelling. And I find it to be also lazy, because that's a turnoff for me for a lot of contemporary tokusatsu. It's like, okay, the stakes have been raised. Maybe the villains have some sort of plan or ability this time to defeat our heroes. But then some bullshit thing comes out of the air and it's never hinted at. It just happens. It's like Gamera all of a sudden getting the mana at the end of Gamera 2, and he's able to open up his chest and blast Legion. That's the thing I hate most about that movie, because it's never hinted at. And I understand that Gamera is this like creation out of Atlantis, but still it's never hinted at that Gamera had that ability. In this show, we see with the Ginga Strium and other abilities that Ginga and Victory get over the course of the series, it just happens because that's what the storytelling wants to have happen, and that turns me off with a lot of contemporary tokusatsu stuff.
Well, and like what you said there, and then as far as future Ultra series, they kind of tend to sort of go off of that too. And even before, when there was a hiatus between, I think it was Ultraman 80 and Tinga, when it started with Tinga there, they sort of started doing that, but with changing different suits and all that. And then, of course, with was it the Ginga S movie, which we'll get into in a little bit. When you have Cosmos there, he was one of those that appeared in the Ultraman Cosmos show back in the early 2000s. He tends to transform into different kinds of suits and everything, except they didn't have like these intricate tools and stuff, kind of like the Ultra series that started with Ginga S and then through obviously to today.
I just wish that, because I understand Super Riot Productions, because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Ginga, that Ultraman had not been on for a while at that point. But I think they kind of always knew that Ultraman was coming back. It would be nice if they did something, for example, where like the Strium wristband maybe was introduced or it was mentioned or something like that in, let's say, Ginga. And then it comes back into actual play for Ginga S here. Or earlier in Ginga S, they talk about or hint at something like that wristband in development or coming into play. That's the problem, is that we're not even given any hints. The stuff just happens. That's what disappoints me and frustrates me the most about it, because it's just bad storytelling. So it's like me writing a story about Godzilla fighting Destroya. Destroya has Godzilla on his deathbed. And then I say, Catzilla shows up and like blows his catnip fire at Godzilla's plates, charging him. Godzilla is like uber super duper Godzilla, and then he saves the day. Like, it's random bullshit that the writers throw in because they realize, oh shit, we wrote ourselves in a corner here. and I have no problems with our heroes acquiring or gaining abilities or powers. It just would be nicer to have things either hinted at or shown, or basically to have some sort of build up to something like that. And there's not. It just happens. It's like my kids writing stories. It's storytelling that you expect kids to do, but not adults. And again, I understand that these shows are geared towards kids, but you can't tell me that fans like us. So like, let's say we were kids in the 60s and we grew up on that original Ultraman. And then we kind of continued watching them as newer iterations came out over the years. You can't say that some of the older fans weren't occasionally tuning into this, but that's something else too. Part of the problem is me, but also part of the problem is storytelling, because again, Ultraman has always been sort of geared more towards kids. But the difference is that for a period of time, a vast majority of your major characters were adults. And I could argue because of that, in some ways, adults kind of became part of the audience as well. But then once you got more into what came after 80, when was the next Ultraman? Was that in the 80s as well, or was that the 90s?
It was 90s with Tinga, like I mentioned before, yeah.
So then Tinga in the 90s, I'm sure that's kind of when you had...
Not Tiga, my bad.
So with Tiga, I would assume, because I have not seen it, so I don't know, so correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume that's maybe the first time that your main characters are teenagers, right? Perhaps?
Sort of, yeah. And then Tiga was the very first one that I know of after kind of the original Showa ones, where they didn't have any tools or anything, but they changed suits as far as certain powers to gain. Right.
So it's similar to like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers when we grew up on. The actors were in their 20s, but they were playing teens. Even though they were still older than we are, we still could connect them because they were theoretically closer to our age than someone like our parents at that time, okay, who were in their 40s.
Actually, they were kind of around their 20s, and they were still kind of doing that whole kind of the base patrol peeps and all that stuff with all the flying planes and technology and all that. But
there came a point in time in the Ultra series where your main characters were teenagers, more or less. And then kind of like even here, we don't see them a ton, but they do pop up occasionally where there are a couple younger kids from the underground world that occasionally show up and are a part of the story. So again, I understand that it's geared more towards kids, especially once you get more into the 90s. But that still does not necessarily mean that it's okay to have some bullshit storytelling, because I remember being a kid once, and even though I wasn't all that knowledgeable and experienced in storytelling and the world at large, there were times I could sniff out bullshit in storytelling where I could realize, oh, hey, like they just came up with that, but nothing was ever hinted at or built up to it. That's bullshit. I think it occasionally happened like in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I would argue, was a little bit better in at least building some things up than what I saw, at least in this Ginga S show. And so even kids more or less can tell quite a few times when you're bullshitting them. So it's still no excuse to have this, oh crap, like we did bad writing, we need to come up with something, have Taro come back, and there's this wristwatch that basically gives him the powers of just about every Ultraman that came before. And it's like, but then that makes him too powerful. And then it messes up with storytelling in the future, because instead of Ginga transforming straight into Ginga, why doesn't he just go into Ginga Strium and then just do a power or two from one of the other Ultramen and then defeat the alien invader quickly, because apparently that makes him more strong than if he's just Ginga. I wish this was handled better.
You can sort of say it's like Dragon Ball Z in a way.
Oh, that's a problem I've always had with that.
Where you have the base form, and then you kind of go into Super Saiyan if the character or the villain gets strong or something of the sort. So you can kind of go on that.
I remember you watching that show back in the day, and I would watch some of it with you. And I remember telling you at one point, I'm like, this is complete and utter bullshit, because the hero, there's always something that the hero pulls out that's never hinted at. And I'm just like, I can't do this, because it diminishes the stakes of the story. It's like, okay, yeah, the villain will dominate, but then it's Goku will reach down his pants and say, here's my dong, suck on it, and then he wins the day. Like, it just that was an issue I had with that show. That, to me, Dragon Ball Z, in my opinion, is a pure example of just, okay, stakes are raised, but then the hero will just randomly come up with something that's never built up to and win the day. Like, that frustrates me.
And speaking of which, how about Dark Lugiel? The one thing I would like to say is, we sort of kind of hinted at it as far as how the fuck did he get into the moon there in the first place. But I would also like to say is that it's sort of kind of a good way, and I think this show that we're currently reviewing is sort of like nothing really happened previously in a way. But then also it just kind of feels a little bit confusing because it sort of directly goes off of the previous episode. But then it's like, how the fuck did Dark Lugiel get into the moon in the first place? There. But with Dark Lugiel, he doesn't really do much again.
This is another example of incredible potential that is poorly executed on. I bitched and moaned about it a couple of weeks ago with Ginga. It's still bad here. It's a bit better. But when we talk about the Ginga S movie, holy shit. It's like they took the Lugiel character and said, we hate this motherfucker. What they do to Lugiel in that movie is a crime. But here, it's a little bit of a step up. The kaiju based off of his body is kind of cool, except for the tower sticking out of its back. That's kind of stupid. But still, there's wasted potential here.
And then I would like to say there's one reason why Dark Lugiel exists. He's pretty much Ginga's shadow or alternate evil.
I kind of wondered about, but see here again, and we will not get it either in this show or in the two movies we're going to discuss here eventually. We still have no idea what his backstory is and why he's evil. Typically, the Ultra series does a pretty decent job of this, but he's just a villain because he just is.
Well, I'll tell you, because they pretty much kind of explained it towards the end. I think it was the show or the movie that he's pretty much Dark Lugiel and Ginga are one the same. And Ginga, he was kind of
that's true, yeah,
getting more towards the light sort of ideology, whereas Dark Lugiel really wasn't wanting to do that, and they sort of split.
Well, and part of the reason how they were able to defeat Lugiel, and I think this is complete and utter bullshit, like, from what I understood, the reason why Lugiel was defeated was because Lugiel didn't believe in eternal life, but Ginga did.
Yeah.
And
that sort of thing, yeah.
That is fucking dumb. That's like, okay, Lugiel's an atheist, but Ginga's a Christian, and so, like...
But then you also think it would be the reverse, that villains want more internal life to rule an entire galaxy or universe for that matter. Whereas, as far as, the good guys say, live in the moment. You don't need to be immortal to gain all this powers, some sort of thing. You think it'd be sort of that way instead of reversed.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that, or just like, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything super special, but give me some sort of backstory or MO for him that basically is like, maybe something happened to him because the Ultra family, maybe he was a former Ultraman, and like sort of like in the Christian story, how Satan was a former angel of God, and I forget the exact story, but basically he's a fallen angel, and that's how he became Satan. Maybe you could do something similar to that with Lugiel, because they sort of did that with Belial.
Yeah.
And like you could, like I said, it doesn't have to be super special. Like just have something, maybe even like a Belial version 2, something like that. I'm willing to go with it because to me it's like, oh, like revenge or whatever, like, or even galaxy domination, even something as plain Jane as that, I'm willing to accept and go with. But because Lugiel doesn't believe in an afterlife, Ginga does. Ginga wins. It's like, so what? Okay, like, I mean, I don't know if there's an eternal life or not. And let's face it, nobody knows. Nobody really knows. We'll find out when we're dead if that's true or not. But I hope there is. That's all I'm going to say is I hope there is. But that's not a weapon. Like, that's not something that you defeat someone or something with. If you want to defeat him with the power of love, I'm willing to go with that. That's stupid, but that's something. Like, you kill him with kindness, as the saying goes, or something like that. But because of one person believing that there is an eternal life, and then you have another one that doesn't believe, the one that doesn't believe is defeat, I think it's dumb. Like, they should have just come up with a different way. Like, Go Power Rangers, it would have been dumb. It would have frustrated me. But even have some super duper power up for Ginga and Victory to just defeat him. But because of a belief in eternal life or not, and that defeats Lugiel, is dumb. It's stupid. I hate it. They make Lugiel a punk. Like, again, it's wasted potential. You could have done something really special and unique with this character, even if it was like a Belial 2.0 in some respects. That to me is better than what they are doing with him here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they kind of, like what you said earlier, that they sort of kind of trash him throughout the entire existence of this show, from the first Ginga show here and then in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I have to say something here about Mill Creek, because Mill Creek was beginning to Mill Creek in many ways has pissed me off in the past.
At least they're now bought, so.
Yeah, and let me find it here because I want to make sure I get this right here. Okay. So it has to be said that the translation of this show is really bad. Mill Creek's work here is the worst I've seen out of their Ultraman work so far. There are words missing, wrong words being used in places, and sometimes there's no translation at all in spots. This is a bad job on their part. I think the Ginga S, and I haven't watched all their stuff, but out of what I've watched so far, their translation for Ginga S is pretty bad.
Gotta give it for Minnesota.
No, it's the company. It's the company.
I know. Well, they're based in Minnesota.
Well, remember that one time, like a few years ago on the show, I emailed them about their subtitles being.
I think I remember.
And then, so I sent it off, and then a couple days later, I got an actual response back where the guy was like, "We're sorry this happened. We'll try to do better." Because I remember we were we were watching, I think it was I watched Geet or Orb or something like that for like a year-end special. And I was like, I could not read the fucking subtitles because they were white. There was no real outline to them or whatever. So on the show, I'm writing this nasty email. I'm like, I can't read this shit. Make it better. And then this guy writes back a couple days later, we're sorry. We'll try to do better. I will say, though, I can
they're
at
no
least
longer working there after
here.
they got bought out.
Maybe I'm the one that, crashed and burned the company. We got this madman
that single
who
email
can't read.
completely tanked the company.
I'm like, I can't read this. I'm spending a bunch of money on this stuff and I can't read it.
Be like, oh shit, this email tanked us.
Oh, man.
Should we do final thoughts?
By the way. Well, I got a lot of notes here, and I'm just kind of because we could spend a really long time on this. I'm just kind of wondering, do I even want to? You know what? Like, more or less, the main thoughts have come up. I just want to say a couple quick things about Shepherdon.
Oh.
Shepherdon, which is the underground protector kaiju, he reminds me of a Pokemon character, Lugia. No, not Lugia. Lugia. From, was it the not Ultra, Pokemon Silver cover?
The second gen.
And then he's a cross of Lugia and this Pokemon Ruby.
I know what you're thinking of. Yeah.
The red one. I don't know what the name of that Pokemon is.
I know what you're thinking
of that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, that's a Pokemon. But that's all I wanted to say.
But yeah, it's pretty cool though. And
it's cool. To me, that's not a knock. I just am like, this definitely looks like a cross between Lugia and that Ruby Pokemon.
It would be kind of cool to have that figure, especially the translucent version that they show on there in the, the show. Even that
to me.
Even the sword, even though that they only showed that for like I think 2-3 times.
Okay, that's kind of where, again, the show comes back to be very toyetic because it comes back and I go, that's a fucking toy. You goddamn well know that they made a toy version of that because I'm going, that would not be a proper sword. It's like, that's a goddamn toy that they sold. And it's like translucent. Hey, get the mysterious, like, ultra rare Shepherdon figure. It's translucent because that's what they do with a lot of theater exclusives for Godzilla, where they made them translucent and shit like that. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, here we go again.
I knew when I was gonna. I was trying to figure out how to bring that in, and then once you brought up Shepherdon, it's like, oh, this is perfect timing to bring this shit up.
I'm like, that's a fucking toy that they sell in toy stores, and you goddamn well know it. I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, bad enough that they kept the Spark Dolls, but they kind of kept it a little bit like under the radar, just a little bit, and they're like, buy our Shepherdon shit, translucent Shepherdon and his sword. And I'm like, that. Oh man, just
oh man,
son of a bitch. But yeah, there's a lot more I could go into. But you know what? Like, how long?
Plus, we got a game going here later on.
Well, we've already talked almost an hour just on the show.
Yeah, close to an hour.
More or less, we kind of hit on the main points. Let's just go into final thoughts and a rating here.
Want me to start first, or
you could go first, so that's fine.
Yeah, as far as Ultraman Ginga S goes, as I was saying earlier, I would say it's light years better compared to the previous show that we reviewed in the last episode here, and the story is much better. A lot more resources involved this time around, fortunately. We get better character development, better practical and visual effects this time. You can say a little bit so you can nitpick a little bit here and there as far as visual effects. Did I say character development?
No.
Better character development. I would say better variety in monsters and villains in here. Just things I'd say went right this time around, and I think, well, I shouldn't say think. This is kind of the starting point of kind of the next gen of Ultraman shows after this show, where they kind of make and how to kind of do things, and as far as some of the tools that they'll use for power-ups and all that sort of thing, and then kind of having some of these spark dolls or medallions or cards kind of as a backdrop for that sort of thing, but not make it too commercialized like the previous show. Yeah, it's a much better show this time around. And then as far as the amount of episodes, I think 16 was good enough. If they kind of did things, maybe 24 would be a bit of a stretch, but I would say 16, I think it would be the right amount, because I know 24, I think, is kind of the usual now.
That seems to be the new normal for this sort of thing.
Yeah, but I would say 16, I think, is probably enough for this show, and then maybe 1 or 2 movies. I think the second one is a bit of a stretch, but we'll get there. To that
one. We'll get there.
But with that said, as far as Ultraman Giga S goes, as far as the rating, I will give this one. I'll give this one a solid B-.
Oh wow! Okay. All right. Ultraman Ginga S is in many ways exactly what you would expect from a more modern Ultraman entry. It's bigger, louder, more polished than its predecessor, and on a surface level, that goes a long way. The improved production value is immediately noticeable. The fight choreography is consistently strong, and there's a greater sense of scale that helps the series feel more substantial than Ginga. Add in something like Ultraman Victory's ability to take an attribute from defeated kaiju, and there are moments where the show genuinely feels creative and energized, like it's trying to push the formula forward in fun ways. But the deeper you get into it, the more it becomes clear that Ginga S is constantly working against itself. One of its biggest issues is how heavily it leans into gimmicks. Spark dolls, Victory Lancers, Victorium, wafers. Oh, we forgot to talk about the Victory wafers. That's another product I'm sure they sold in stores, those little Victory wafers that those guys were eating. Fuck, man. Probably good.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised, yeah. Because, I mean, if they were sort of packaged that way and also real and edible, yeah, I wouldn't be a bit surprised at the least.
Yeah, I'm glad that I would have gone off on that. Let me start that sentence off again. One of its biggest issues is how heavily it leans into gimmicks. Spark dolls, Victory Lancers, Victorium, wafers, crystals, cannons. It just keeps piling on. And at a certain point, it stops feeling like a story and starts feeling like a delivery system for merchandise. That wouldn't necessarily be a deal breaker if the characters and narrative were strong enough to carry it, but too often they take a backseat to whatever the next power-up or item is supposed to be. The moment Ginga gains the ability to pull powers from other Ultramen, it's hard not to feel that familiar sense of deflation. Because once your hero can always just get stronger, the tension starts to evaporate. It becomes increasingly difficult to believe there are real stakes when the show keeps handing out new abilities whenever it needs to. And that issue with stakes runs through almost the entire series. Time and time again, the show sets up consequences only to immediately walk them back. Ultramen get defeated, but their human hosts are basically fine. Power limitations are hinted at, but never really enforced. Late in the game, we suddenly get a this is your last transformation type of moment that feels less like a natural development and more like a last-second attempt to inject tension. This is when Ginga tells Hikaru he can only transform one more time. There's also this ongoing problem where the characters aren't truly becoming the Ultramen. They're more like passengers protected by some invisible buffer. What I mean by that is, kind of like with the original one, Hayata was Ultraman, but in Ginga and then here, it's like
you could say it's like Pacific Rim in a way.
Sort of, yeah. which further undercuts any sense of danger. When you compare that to something like the original Ultraman, where there was at least a clearer sense of limitation and sacrifice, the difference is pretty stark. Even the pacing contributes to this problem since incidents happen so rapidly that nothing has time to breathe or feel consequential. Then there's UPG, which might be one of the most ineffective defense teams in the franchise. Watching Orisa and Goki fire pistols at massive monsters is already pushing it, but when the show doubles down by having them hook those pistols into a car battery to make them stronger, it crosses over into unintentional comedy. It raises a legitimate question about whether they need to be in the show at all, because more often than not, they don't meaningfully contribute to the outcome of anything. They're just kind of there, filling space, occasionally doing something ridiculous enough to pull you out of the moment entirely. And yet, despite all that, the show isn't without merit. Around the middle to late stretch, roughly episodes 10 and 11, I guess 10 and 11, I was saying 9 and 10 earlier, you can feel it start to find its footing. The storytelling tightens up, the tone becomes more focused, and there are glimpses of what the series could have been if it had leaned more into atmosphere and escalation earlier on. Moments like the introduction of stronger threats, including things like Five King, actually feel earned and help build a sense of progression that had been missing. There are even flashes of that older Ultra series vibe where the story takes precedence and the tone carries a bit more weight. Unfortunately, the show never fully capitalizes on that momentum. Even as the writing improves in the final stretch, it still can't resist falling back on contrivances. Characters shift motivations when it's convenient. Plot devices appear exactly when needed, and emotional beats get undercut by either awkward writing or the same toy-driven logic that's been present all along. Mana's inconsistent characterization is a good example of this, the cyborg, as is the sudden ease with which previously established limitations just stop mattering. By the time you reach the finale, the final fight itself is solid enough, but everything surrounding it feels stitched together with last-minute ideas rather than carefully built storytelling. Lucio also ends up being a major missed opportunity. Visually, he's mostly effective, though the design has its quirks, but narratively, he's paper thin. There's very little motivation beyond simply being the villain, and the explanation we do get, tying his conflict with Ginga to a philosophical disagreement about eternal life, lands in a way that feels more silly than meaningful. It's the kind of concept that could have worked with more development, but here it feels undercooked, and ultimately makes him come across as less threatening than he should be. On top of that, the translation issues don't help. Missing words, incorrect phrasing, and inconsistent subtitles make certain moments harder to follow than they should be, which is especially frustrating in a series that already struggles with clarity in its storytelling. So where does that leave Ginga S? It's definitely an improvement over Ginga in terms of presentation, action, and ambition. It's more confident, more visually engaging, and at times genuinely entertaining. But it's also a show that constantly undermines itself with lazy shortcuts, over-reliance on gimmicks, and a reluctance to fully commit to its own stakes. It wants to tell a compelling story, but it keeps getting distracted. It wants to raise tension, but it won't follow through. It wants to evolve, but it keeps falling back on the same familiar crutches. And yet, there's still something here. When it works, it really works. You can see the potential. You can see the version of the show that would have been great. It just never quite gets there. In the end, Ultraman Ginga S is a solid but frustrating entry, one that's easy to enjoy while you're watching it, but harder to fully respect once you step back and think about everything it leaves on the table. And I gave it a C. And so with that, we move to the first of two movies we're going to discuss here, Ultraman Ginga S, the movie Showdown, the 10 Ultra Warriors. God damn it, Japanese, you got to condense this stuff. They love their long titles. I have to say, I really love the opening of this movie. It's very catchy. It's incredible.
It kind of pretty much
really
sets
like
it up.
This.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is fantastic.
And also, this is kind of one of those kind of specials or movies that they tend to really rely on the heavy green screen sort of thing, kind of like what you see on some of the YouTube specials that they have on their official YouTube channel. Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of it.
By the way, did
these sorts of Ultraman specials or movies?
Well, I kind of figured that because my son and I, odd number of years ago, we watched the two Ultraman Zero movies, and I kind of figured that's where they were going. Did you happen to watch either the English or Japanese version of
The Japanese version.
Okay, so for both of these, I watched the English. The dubbing for this, especially for the captain of the UPG, is absolutely hysterical. All you need to do, you don't have to watch the whole thing. Just start the movie with the English and then just go to like the earlier part of the movie when he first says something. It's hilarious. I love the voice that they have for the captain here. I think it's unintentionally funny.
For me, I just kind of stuck with what I've watched from the show since from the Ginga show and just kind of went through all the way with the original. So then that way it can be a little bit more consistent for me. But anyways.
Well, and to me, you remember the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
This movie, to me, feels like what Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was to the Power Rangers series, where it's connected, but at the same time, it feels detached, like it's sort of its own thing. Because in that one, like you had Ivan Ooze as the big villain and all that, like it was connected, but it felt separate. To me, that's kind of what this movie feels like too. It's connected to the Ginga/Ginga S universe, but it's kind of its own thing at the same time.
Yeah, it's sort of connected because, it kind of goes off after the last episode where everything is kind of put back together, and then you also have Tomoya. He rebuilt Mana there with. Now I know we didn't specifically talk about this, where she kind of went down to the Victorium core and kind of stored all of her memory and stuff in this Victorian type of crystal and all that there, and completely rebuilt part of the UPG. Now kind of has more human-like characteristics and emotions, sort of like, and then you have some of the Victorian characters like the one girl. They're now part of the UPG team there. And then obviously towards the end, you have Show become part of the UPG team there. But yeah, I do like how they set things up overall for this movie with having Cosmos there kind of be intricate to this story, and then how to encounter this. I forget the exact name. It was Edelgar.
Etelgar. Yeah.
And then he manipulates this one princess from another world named Arena.
It's Elena in the English dub, so I'm going to call her Elena.
Oh, going off the cast list I've got here is Arena.
Yeah. Okay. So you touched upon one of two things that I have major issue with this movie, and it's a 62-minute movie.
63 to be exact.
Sure. That's not what I'm going to argue about. Okay. So, Elena. God damn it. This whole, her moving back and forth between being good and evil, fucking annoying. I hate how many times this happens in this movie and how it's so poorly done. Again, how many times it happens. And I realized too, Etelgar really didn't need her. Like, there was no real point in having her involved at all, because Etelgar,
I was gonna mention that it just felt like overall with her entire scenes in it, and then her backstory and everything, it could have just been completely cut out from it, and you wouldn't even have a full hour.
And even then, if they put her in to have some sort of human perspective on the villain side, it still is unnecessary, because Etelgar can speak to our heroes. You just don't need her.
Or maybe like you have Cosmos maybe kind of helping her plan it out or something, or maybe kind of the guardian of her home world or something, and then like he comes in, destroys everything or something of the sort. Edelgar, and then they sort of escape, and then they stumble upon the world. That they could have done something like that.
Sure, yeah. The way that it's done, there's no need for her. She's an unnecessary character that really does nothing. And then another thing attached to her character, and it's very fucking creepy with Hikaru in this thing. He says it a few times throughout the course of this movie. He tells her to smile, or he wants to see her smile. Yep. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, like you creepy fuck! Like what?
It's like something when he was sort of talking and sort of leading up to the smile thing. It's like I was having some like weird sort of thoughts and stuff. I'm not gonna say. It's like it's sort of like it was leading up to that. I was like, no, don't. But then when he said smile, I was like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, well, I've seen a lot of dumb shit in like these contemporary Ultra series. I'm not going to be surprised if she smiles and then all of a sudden everything gets solved. Like, you know, like these shows are that ridiculous where I wouldn't pass that up for them to pull and be like, oh, a girl smiles and then that's it. Everything's solved. So,
yeah.
And then another issue I have with this is Ultraman Zero's a dick for having Sho and Hikaru train and basically not telling them what they needed to do to defeat a Telgar, which is basically to work together, to have, you know, to just work together, which is something that they had been doing in the show prior to this anyways. But they are padding this movie out because it creates this training montage, which Sho is ripped and Hikaru is this skinny twig. Like,
yeah,
kind of embarrassing.
That was kind of one thing I kind of mentioned. It's like, boys, like just looking at his biceps and arm in general, it's like, I think if I was around his age or something, it's like, I think I had like thicker biceps or arm by that time.
I was legitimately concerned for the actor. I'm like, is he like not eating enough? Like, to me, it was scarily thin. But
anyways, besides the point, the one thing, kind of what you were pointing out, is like it was pretty much leading to them kind of merging their minds, kind of be sort of in one. And like I was saying with the show, I think, it is like this show was made right around the time of Pacific Rim where it was kind of the hype. I think they sort of kind of got the idea of having the merged minds and stuff from Pacific Rim. And when they merged both Victory and Ginga into this kind of singular Ultraman, cool suit, by the way. I can give them that. But much better looking suit, but I think they sort of got that whole idea from Pacific Rim.
Yeah, I think the suit is really, like, the upgrades here are cool. The fight choreography is fantastic. But, okay. I guess 3 things I have issue with this.
Well, you already got one down.
No, I got Elena. I've got this whole training thing with Ultraman Zero. It's to pad out the damn movie, and it slows everything down because the movie had incredible momentum up until the middle part of this movie, and then it just fucking slows to a halt. Lugiel! Of course Lugiel got destroyed in one hit. What in the fucking hell? I mean, this is so fucking dumb. Lugiel is the worst. I mean, actually, the writers are the worst for wasting a character such as Lugiel. Why the fuck have him in this thing to begin with? He gets hammered in one hit like a bitch. But Lugiel is a bitch. I don't like the fact that they treated him I don't like how they treat him here. Like, this was such a wasted character. I mean, like, Belial was treated wonderfully. I love not only the look of Belial, but I love what they did with his story, what they did with him as a character in an MMO. I mean, that's how you do a villain. And Lugiel, they're just like, nope, like
pretty
dead.
Much the only reason why he was in that movie is to pretty much test out the new Ultraman Ginga or Victory, whatever. I forget the name of the form. There, when they merged together, it's sort of, you know, showed his powers and strength and everything. Pretty much.
I will say, though, I kind of like the final fight a little bit because it's almost like a video game where you have different levels, and at the very top is your big bad. I kind of like that. It's very video game-ish.
I would say it was sort of like that with Ultra Fight Victor, which obviously we're going to get to here in a little bit.
Ultra Fight Victory does not even come close, though, to like... Yeah.
But other than that, the story for this one was, you can say it's sort of backtrack a little bit after the show in a ways. But as far as the visual effects in this, it's pretty spectacular. I would say it's maybe a little bit better compared to the show here. Because, I mean, obviously you got one of Japan's legacy studios in Shochiku here behind Toho and all that. But, and then, yeah, obviously you could have just cut out the whole story with Arena, or they should have thought about reworking that whole entire thing. And then as far as that, you know, when you had the UPG team going in to say some of the Ultramen that were trapped in kind of like this Superman like type
it
of
happens too quick and easy. Yeah.
And then you had Edelgar. It's like, for some reason I want to say something else, but it's like it's just hard to pronounce his name in a way. And then it was when when Edelgar was shooting the beam, or I think it was like some kind of smog or whatever it was at the UPG team. And then they were put to sleep, and then they were kind of, you start to see their dreams, and they were starting to become afraid of whatever that they were afraid of the most. And, you know, you were talking about Arisa, and then Goki. My God. Goki, his fear, I kid you not, tomatoes. And then the visual effects when they were showing him running through this like ramp sort of thing in one of the scenes, I would say that that's probably the worst visual effects, because it seemed like that they just used cutouts for these tomatoes and just roll them around instead of just like visual effects. Probably the worst. But we'll get to Ultra Fight Victory. I would say that's not compared. I would say I wouldn't compare it to Ultra Fight Victory and when it comes to visual effects.
Look, I'm not a fan of fresh tomatoes myself. I'll eat them cooked or stewed, you know, that sort of thing. But that was so dumb. His fear of tomatoes. It was like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, but the tomatoes didn't have like evil, nasty faces on them. You know something, though? And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I noticed it an awful lot in contemporary tokusatsu hero shows, where it seems like in order for special moves to work, they have to announce them right as they're using them. I find that to be silly and ridiculous.
Well, it's like that in the Super Sentai stuff, Power Rangers,
Right.
and as well as
Yeah.
a lot of the animes and stuff that you'll see.
I just think, I mean, on the one hand, I can understand that maybe they say them at least once just so like your audience understands what that move is. But it seems like the moves are not going to work unless they say them. So it's like, the Strium Beam. Okay, so is the Strium Beam not going to work if you don't say Strium Beam? I mean, I find it to be so silly and ridiculous. But I like the final fights. I think they're really cool. Like I said, it's very video game-ish. Other than sort of the middle part of the movie, it's not a terrible way, I guess, to spend 62 minutes. I mean, the middle part, again, is frustrating. Movie, special, whatever you want to call it, yeah. So we want to go into final thoughts and a rating here?
Might as well, since we kind of pretty much touched pretty much every point, kind of its basic premise.
I'll go first this time. Ultraman Ginga S, the movie Showdown, the 10 Ultra Warriors, is one of those entries that feels like it knows exactly what it wants to be. A fast, flashy, fan service heavy companion piece to Ginga S. And for the most part, it delivers on that promise, even if it occasionally trips over the same issues that held the series back. Right from the start, the movie comes out swinging with a genuinely strong opening. It's catchy, energetic, and immediately pulls you in, setting the tone for something that feels a bit bigger and more cinematic than the show. That sense of scale carries throughout, too. The production has noticeably improved. Better effects, stronger cinematography, more polished miniatures, and the fight choreography remains a highlight. When the movie is focused on action, it's in a very comfortable groove. The movie is really leaning into Ultraman Zero. He's front and center, upgraded, important, and very much treated like the central Ultraman of this era. At the same time, the movie has this slightly detached feeling from the main series. It's connected, sure, but it also plays more like a side adventure. Something closer in spirit to how the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie existed alongside its show rather than fully within it. The introduction of dimensional elements adds to that disconnect, making the whole thing feel a bit more special event than direct continuation. And to the movie's credit, the pacing is generally solid. It moves quickly, keeps things engaging, and doesn't overstay its welcome at just over an hour. But that doesn't mean it's immune to some awkward stretches, particularly in the middle, where the training sequence between Hikaru and Sho drags things down a bit. The montage itself is unintentionally hilarious, especially when you've got Zero just kind of hanging around while these two go through what amounts to a glorified video game tutorial. Watching Sho, who looks like he could bench press a car, train alongside Hikaru, who looks like he wandered in from a completely different show, only adds to the comedy. And after all that, the payoff feels minimal, like the movie just needed to check a training arc box and move on. But if there's one element that really tests your patience, it's Elena, or Irina, I guess as Jason says it's called, or she's called. Her constant back and forth between good and evil isn't just noticeable, it's relentless. It happens so frequently and so quickly that any emotional weight it might have had completely evaporates. Instead of adding complexity, it starts to feel like padding, or worse, a narrative crutch the movie leans on whenever it needs something to happen. You reach a point where you're not even reacting anymore. You're just waiting for the next flip. It also raises the question of why she's even necessary to begin with, because Telgar feels more than capable of carrying the villain role on his own. Elena ends up less like a meaningful character and more like a toggle switch the script keeps flipping for convenience. The same sense of convenience shows up elsewhere too. The movie continues the franchise's habit of introducing powers and abilities exactly when they're needed, which undercuts the stake in a pretty familiar way. There's never really a sense that the heroes are in danger when the solution can and usually does appear out of thin air. And of course, this is all paired with the classic tokusatsu tradition of announcing every move before using it, because apparently these abilities don't function unless you yell their name first. Then there's Lugiel. Again. At this point, his inclusion feels less like a meaningful return and more like the writers just not knowing when to let go. After being underdeveloped in the series, he shows up here only to be dispatched almost immediately, which somehow makes him feel even more wasted. It's hard not to be frustrated by how much potential the character had compared to how little the franchise actually does with him. Still, when the movie gets to its final act, it finds its footing again. The last battle is genuinely fun, big, chaotic, and full of larger-than-life energy you want from an Ultraman property. It does have a bit of a video game boss feel to it. It leans into the spectacle, and for a while you can just sit back and enjoy the ride. In the end, this is a movie that's easy to like, even if it's just as easy to poke holes in. It's not particularly deep. It leans heavily on familiar tropes in certain moments, especially Elena's character, and the undercutting of stakes can get pretty frustrating. But at the same time, it's well-paced, visually stronger than the series, and delivers enough fun moments to justify its runtime. For a 62-minute tokusatsu film, it's a solid, entertaining watch. Not essential, not groundbreaking, but definitely not a waste of time either. Just be prepared to roll your eyes every time Elena decides, yet again, who she wants to be this minute. I gave it a B.
Even with all some of the negative stuff you had with it, but you still gave it a better.
It's entertaining and engaging enough that as I've always said throughout the life of this podcast for the 16 years that we've been doing it, I've always said, to me, entertainment is like the framework for a movie. I don't care how good you are at storytelling. If it's not entertaining and engaging, I'm not going to care. So this was fun. It was a fun battle. It was entertaining. That's, to me, more important than anything else.
Yeah, the movie is pretty entertaining. It's kind of follows along with a lot of the specials that we typically see from the Ultra series when they uploaded to their, like, these specials onto their official YouTube channel. That's relied heavily a lot on the green screen backgrounds and environments to make the environments. And I would say, as far as the story, it took a little bit of a back step, particularly like with the whole arena sort of side story here. They could have at least cut her completely or have rewritten her story, like I talked about earlier, having her be guarded, or have Ultraman Cosmos protect or guard this home planet of hers, and then Edgar comes and destroys it, and then they escape from it and needing help defeating this Edgar villain. Here, that probably would have been a better story, and also extend probably the original 63-minute movie, and probably extend it even further if they would have went that route. But as far as, like what Ken said, as far as the premise, like the beginning of this film, kind of setting things up, it is pretty good. Kind of straight away get this battle between Edgar and Cosmos there, and kind of set things up, and then of course get a cool new Ultra Ginga Victory type of suit when they merge with one another, but then also kind of sort of ripping the idea of Pacific Rim here, having the merged minds thinking alike, that sort of thing. Kind of a cheap way of doing it, especially when this whole show came out not long after the Pacific Rim did. I would say maybe 1 or 2 years after. So it's still fresh. And then, yeah, like with Lugiel there, he was just mainly there just to show the strength or power of this newly emerged Ultraman Ginga Victory there. And then, but other than that, the whole meat and potato thing with the battles towards the end of this movie / special is pretty much the highlight of it, because this is kind of the thing that you're going to see a lot with a lot of these Ultraman specials, is just full-on visual effects heavy weaponry environments, and then a lot of Ultraman or men involved into defeating like this evil villain, and everything kind of leads up to like a lot of Michael Bay explosions.
And vamping. That's one thing we didn't talk about. There's a lot of vamping in front of explosions in all these.
You're going to see quite a bit of that with these newer Ultraman shows where they turn around, having the villain fall, and then explosions and stuff in the backdrop. But yeah, I would say overall, it's still a pretty good entry into the Ginga Show there. And with that, as far as the rating, I'll probably give this one a B as well.
Okay. And now to conclude this episode, Ultra Fight Victory, the movie. It's almost like it should be 3 separate words with an exclamation point at the end.
The grand.
Holy shit. Oh boy.
I can probably sum it up is that why was this even a thing? I would say they could have at least given these powers to show in Ultraman Victory. I would say at least in the show, kind of towards the end of the show, or perhaps in the movie before this one. I don't know why they needed to do a specific one that just mainly focuses on Ultraman Victory.
This is awful. It's 38 minutes. It's just a tad longer than a regular television episode. But the green screen is atrocious.
I would say, like, this whole thing, when you watched it, I almost thought that I was watching a fan film, just specifically focused on
what it
Ultraman
came
Victory.
off looking like to me. Yeah, it was some sort of fan film. But this is Subaraya Productions. It is terrible. And there's this new weapon called King Timber, where it's a sword and then it's a fucking clarinet. Whose fucking idea was it that a clarinet should be a special weapon? Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed today, Steve? Because this is fucking stupid. Really, a clarinet is how our heroes are going to save the day? Fuck you, you're fired. I mean, this is...
Yeah, fucking Steve.
This is so stupid. I'm like...
It's like, it's sort of ripping off of the Green Ranger here.
But the Green Ranger thing was cool because it was sound to summon the Dragon Zord. It wasn't like Happy Go Fuck Yourself Day or something like that where like you play this music and it wins the day. This is stupid. This is like twiddle-dee fucking do. It just like this is befuddle stick stuff. I don't understand it. Like everything about this movie is so wrong. And I mean, I'm sorry for the language. Part of it is comedy to make everyone laugh because some of the stuff here is
but it's
just,
also frustration at the same time.
It is. Some of it is downright frustration, but it's like you gotta like laugh at it. Otherwise, you're gonna cry and take it way too seriously. But also, okay, the Space Emperor, a pretty lame name, but he ends up being called, what is his name here?
Also, I just found this out. I should have thought
Super Grand King Spectre. God damn.
Also, I should have realized this here is that apparently this is like Attack of the Super Monsters, this Ultra Fight Victory. Because from what I'm reading here, there's It's based off of a mini series that consists of 13 episodes of Ultra Fight Victory. That's pretty much this entire show. I just now found this out.
There's an Ultra Fight Victory show?
Apparently, because it says number of episodes 13. And the runtime, it's mini episodes. Pretty much it's all compact of 3 to 4 minute mini episodes.
So I'm assuming Mill Creek never picked that up. So were these like produced for the internet?
I think it might have been. I think it's 13 mini episodes that are 3 to 4 minutes, and it's combined into a 45 minutes, one single episode.
I give up.
That's the reason why it looked so terrible. It was made as a fan film.
This had to have been produced for the internet, like those mini episodes.
I wouldn't doubt it one bit.
That still doesn't excuse how terrible this looks. But like Super Grand King Spectre, silly, but at the same time, cool name. It would have been nice to have actually had him in an actual episode.
I just now read this one paragraph, the first sentence. Currently, a newly released English dub of Ultra Fight Victory is airing on Super Riot Productions' YouTube channel. It was made specifically for the YouTube channel.
I'm still not excusing it for how terrible it looks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not letting you off the hook, because the last one looked really damn good, and then of course Victorium comes back, but it's like, okay, so you have this Super Grand King Spectre, the Space Emperor. He's involved with being released from the Victorium Corps. Then why didn't he get released in the Ginga S show, and or why wasn't anything done about it during the show when the Victorium Corps was temporarily removed in that series? It makes no sense.
Just completely remove the Dark Lugiel story or synopsis for that character and just replace it with this Emperor dude.
In many ways, this is the story behind this is a huge plot hole because it does not work.
The whole thing in general is a huge plot hole.
The whole thing is full of something, I will say that, and it's nothing good. But it just okay. We barely touched upon Shepherdon when we talked about the Ginga S show. Okay, Shepherdon. Let's come out and just say it, is the key to the whole Ginga and Victory universe. Because every time they need real help, he is the one that is the key. By the way, how the hell can he get resurrected? I thought he died in Ginga S, and it was believed that he was going to stay dead. And then also Sheridan should be getting his own movie because he is the key to everything in this universe here.
Well, I think the only thing that sort of made sense is that I think he, as far as show, he still had that translucent figure, by the way, of Shepardon, and I think it's like I didn't quite catch it, but I think he sort of used it to bring him out, but I think he's sort of like the time, like for like a time limited sort of thing, kind of like an Ultraman, and then went back into like the translucent figure after that. And then he's made into a sword again, which is sort of the last time that we see this toy Shepardon sword.
This all goes fucking back to, again, one of my issues with contemporary tokusatsu, where it's bullshit is just made up by the seat of your pants. It's like, hey, we wrote this. Oh, fuck. We wrote ourselves into a corner. What do? Let's pull out this goddamn clarinet. Why a clarinet? Why not a clarinet? You know what? You're right. We're under a time constraint. We're not going to rewrite this to make absolute fucking sense. We're going to make it worse by writing up more bullshit. throw the goddamn clarinet in. It's going to save the day. By the way, Shepherdon's going to come back. How and why? Who the fuck cares?
It's like how we're going to bring this flute clarinet sort of thing. Oh, let's bring in Ultraman Hikari for no apparent reason.
Yeah. Oh God. Okay. Okay. Ultraman Hikari, he comes in. All right. So if he's strong enough to defeat Yapul, who is the villain of this whole thing, then why did he not do it himself instead of giving his power to Victory? It makes no fucking sense other than to follow through on making this an Ultraman Victory movie. That is it. He basically says, hey, this is pretty good power, have it. And I'm like, then why don't you go do it? Because it's not my movie. Good point, but it's still stupid. It just...
I don't think there's really not much to go on about this.
So, okay, again, does a serious question to people out there. Look, I'm a huge Ultraman fan, okay? But I've always said, I even said it before we started going into the contemporary stuff. I said I've seen enough bits and pieces of some of the contemporary tokusatsu hero shows to be very concerned about watching them because, look, original Ultraman did it occasionally pull stuff out of its ass, occasionally, but it didn't do it that often. And usually if it did, more times than not, there was some sort of buildup or an announcement of something like that. Okay. Very rarely did those older Ultraman shows just kind of pull shit out of thin air and just write contrivance and tropish shit for the fuck of it. Okay. But contemporary tokusatsu has a problem with just throwing all sorts of stuff in because they can. And there's no word of mouth to it. There's no build up to it whatsoever. Shit just happens because. And that pisses me off. That pisses me off about contemporary tokusatsu shit. And I am still deeply concerned as we continue to move throughout our podcast moving forward as we start to cover more and more contemporary stuff. And by contemporary stuff, I'm talking about from about the late 80s-ish all the way up to now, that this is going to be a problem. Okay. And look, I gave a passing grade to the Ginga S movie, despite some of its bullshit. I gave a passing grade to the Ginga S show, despite some of its bullshit. But I thought, by and large, those two things had enough going for it that I'm like, look, I can kind of overlook it to some degree and kind of see it for fun entertainment for 16 episodes or for 62 minutes. Not here. And part of it is because it's a 38 minutes terrible green screen bullshit fest.
YouTube video, pretty much.
And it's trying to sell you toys again with a clarinet sword. And again, there's a wasted villain in Super Grand King Spectre that, I mean, again, I don't know if he shows up in any other shows or future movies. I hope he gets used again because there's potential here. But again, he's wasted.
I do think I may have remember seeing him in one of the other specials on the Super Raya YouTube channel.
I hope he's utilized better there. But then, too, the whole story surrounding this comes into conflict with the ending of Ginga S. And it just, we're not supposed to give a damn. Like, you as an audience member should not be thinking about nor questioning this. And this pisses me off.
It's like when it comes to the whole Ginga show that we've got now all finally laid out, you can just entirely skip the first one, Ultraman Ginga show, and you can entirely skip Ultra 5 Victory. Like, pretty much the Ginga S show and then the Ginga S movie is all that matters.
Even the Ginga S movie, even though it's really entertaining, I wouldn't call it necessary. Because Ultraman, all of the Ultraman properties since its inception has been about the shows.
Yeah. But I know that after the shows, they typically have done.
Now they are doing that, yeah.
Movies and stuff, so.
That was a more recent thing starting, what, was it the 70s or the 80s was when they first started doing
I think it was in the 80s when they started Zoffy. I think it was Zoffy was more of a theatrical version. I think if I remember when they started with Zoffy or Zerth, one of those two. That was more theatrical.
But
no, it was. I think it was the first Ultraman where I think they took some parts of the original Ultraman show where they kind of did all that sort of jazz, and then I think it went with Zoffy and then Zerth.
Well, yeah, like Johnny Sacco had a movie when all it was just clips spliced together. I think now that you mention, I do think I remember hearing about an Ultraman movie, but again, it just took elements of the show, spliced them together for a feature-length film. Just,
Yeah.
Just like it's so frustrating because contemporary Ultraman has a ton of explosions, which on one level I find funny. But it's got so many flashing lights and explosions that I think anyone who has epilepsy might have trouble watching these things. Mm-hmm. But it's the continuation of always giving your heroes contrivances to succeed, and it backtracks on raising the stakes because of it. And it fucks around with plots and timelines that really cause a lot of problems. And that's why I've been apprehensive about all this. Like Ginga S, I mean, I'm going to retroactively give that show a C+ instead of a C now because like that thing looks fucking genius compared to granted that was a series, but still this 38-minute bullshit fest is an atrocious abomination. It doesn't want you as a fan to think nor question about anything that happened prior to this because it wants you to buy the product. It wants you to buy the toys. It wants you to buy this movie. It wants you to see this movie. It just, to me, this is where greed becomes a problem. And I think Eiji Tsuburaya, if he were to have been alive for some of the more contemporary stuff, I don't think some of this would have happened.
Well,
I think he would have said no to a lot of this stuff.
Well, and then one of the reasons too is, and I think you did kind of sort of behind the research on it, and when we were talking about the Ultraman Ginga show in the previous episode, where Tsuburaya was kind of in financial trouble and stuff, and then kind of acquisitioned from to another company and all that stuff. And I think that sort of thing, with the company buying Tsuburaya and stuff, they're going to tend to try to make a return on their investment and everything. Hence, with all of these, like Spark Dolls and the Clarinet Sword thing, and then some of the other tools or wristbands that they has kind of this product placement to kind of get kids to buy. One of the sort of ways to make a return on their investment.
I understand that, but it's so fucking blatant. They're not even trying to hide it. And that's the problem. I mean, look, we talked about this 2 weeks ago with shows like He-Man, G.I. Joe. I mean, you name a bunch of different shows from the 80s. They were not quite as anywhere near as blatant as what Ginga was. And it's even the original Ultraman. The thing sold itself. You have your hero and you have all these different monsters. You could have done Ginga without the Spark Dolls. Like, you still could have had like the little item thing because even Hayata had that capsule. But you didn't need the Spark Dolls. All you needed to have was a brand new Ultraman and some Kaiju. Okay. you didn't need to actually put those in the show. And fuck this shit. Like, again, I'm going to use the D word. I am deeply disappointed because, and I know Eiji Tsuburaya is gone and has been gone for a very long time. And usually when your original creator dies, if it doesn't happen immediately, it usually happens eventually where those properties just aren't quite the same. And usually that's not a good thing. And I'm not saying I want the same Ultraman time and again, but I don't want these shows and these movies to basically be one giant toy commercial, literal toy commercial. And on top of that, I want stakes to matter. I don't want bullshit just coming out of thin air just because they can. And I want, if you are writing stories and shows within a particular timeline, I want stuff within that timeline to matter. I don't want you to basically give the middle finger to everything that came before it and say it didn't matter, because that's essentially what you're telling me with part of this story was that what happened with the Victorian Core kind of doesn't matter. Plus, it makes no goddamn sense because with what happened there, it should have brought some of this calamity with Super Grand King Spectre to life at that time, but it didn't. And so you have this issue with events and story and just plot. Do something else. Again, I'm not asking you to be super duper creative. It would help, but look, just come up with something and try to come up with something that's not going to come in conflict with what came before. That's my issue here.
Instead of just making like a YouTube video just for your YouTube channel, we could have just had a separate Ultraman Victory type of TV show that could have come out a year after Ginga S and flesh it out a bit more. That's what I would have rather seen than just an entire like 3 to 4 minute mini episodes that's just combined into near 45-minute episode or special, where it's like it just felt like a fan-made film specifically about Ultraman Victory.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to say something positive, and I will say, look, the fight choreography, again, is pretty good. The movie, in terms of it, well, movie, quote unquote, in terms of its pacing, is pretty engaging. Again, it's 38 minutes, so it moves pretty quick.
The Ultraman Victory suit looks pretty.
Yeah, the suit looks good.
Cool.
There's quite a bit of action into it, but just the logic and the story issues, to me, that breaks it. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to go into final thoughts here.
Go right ahead.
All right, here. Ultra Fight Victory feels like the natural extension of what the Ginga era was already doing, only now distilled into a shorter, faster, and somehow even more chaotic package. Coming off a Ginga-focused series and movie, shifting the spotlight over to Ultraman Victory makes sense on paper, and to the mini-movie's credit, it does give Victory a bit more room to stand on his own. But like a lot of things in this era, what you gain in focus, you sometimes lose in execution. One of the most immediate and honestly distracting issues is the visual presentation. For something that you'd assume has at least a modest bump in budget or polish, the green screen effects are surprisingly rough, and that's putting it mildly. In fact, they often look worse than what we saw in Ginga S or even in the previous movie, and it's the kind of rough that's hard to ignore. It's especially frustrating because the actual suit designs, Victory himself, and many of the kaiju look genuinely good. There's a strong visual foundation here that just isn't always supported by the effects around it. That said, the mini-movie does move. At just under 40 minutes, it has no choice, and for the most part, that works in its favor. There's very little downtime, and it keeps things engaging enough that you're not sitting around waiting for something to happen. It knows it doesn't have the luxury of slow buildup, so it just barrels forward, which makes it an easy watch even when the story is ridiculous. Narratively, this thing feels like it was assembled with duct tape and a shrug. The introduction of the so-called Space Emperor raises immediate questions, mainly why none of this came up during Ginga S when the Victorian Corps was already a central plot point. If this thread is tied so closely to that, it creates a pretty noticeable continuity gap that the mini-movie doesn't even attempt to address. It's one of several moments where the story seems less concerned with making sense and more concerned with just getting to the next fight. The same goes for the character logic. Ultraman Hikari, for example, is presented as powerful enough to deal with the Apu, yet instead of handling the situation himself, he passes that power along to Victory. And while this is a Victory movie, it doesn't make the logic feel any less flimsy. It's another case of the narrative bending itself to fit the story rather than the other way around. Then there's the King Timber weapon, and yes, the clarinet and sword, I guess. I don't know who thought adding a clarinet into a weapon was cool, but it's kind of a choice that crosses the line from quirky to outright hilarious. Every time it shows up, it's hard not to laugh, and not necessarily in a way that creators intended. It's one of those ideas that might have sounded unique on paper, but ends up feeling completely ridiculous in execution. Yet, despite of all that, the mini-movie still manages to be entertaining. Part of that comes down to the action. The final battle in particular is well choreographed and delivers the kind of spectacle you'd expect, especially with a visually striking opponent like Super Grand King Spectre. The name might sound like it was generated by throwing darts at a board of cool-sounding words, but the design itself works. In fact, it almost feels like a waste that a villain with that kind of presence is confined to a 38-minute story instead of a full-length feature where he could have been properly developed. Another part of the enjoyment comes from the returning elements, seeing classic Ultraman pop up, getting more time with Victory, and of course the continued presence of Shepardon, who at this point might as well be the MVP of the entire Ginga Victory era. Seriously, every time shit hits the fan, Shepardon shows up to save the day in some form or another. It's almost comical how essential he's become. Which, of course, raises another question. How exactly is he back at all after what seemed like a definitive end in Ginga S? But like many things here, the answer is less about logic and more about convenience. And that really is the through line of the entire experience. Convenience powers show up when needed. The Victorian Corps once again becomes a last-minute solution. Characters get exactly what they need to win, exactly when they need it. While that keeps the story moving, it also drains a lot of the tension out of it. The villains never really feel like they have a fair shot when the heroes are constantly being handed new tools to overcome them. In the end, Ultra Fight Victory is very much a mixed bag. It's fast, it's energetic, it has some genuinely fun action, and it's an easy way to spend about 40 minutes. But it's also messy, contrived, and at times unintentionally funny in ways that undercut its own stakes. It shares many of the same issues as Ginga S and its movie. Over-reliance on power-ups, shaky internal logic, and a tendency to prioritize spectacle over substance. Still, if you go in knowing what you're getting, there's enjoyment to be found here. Just don't be surprised that by the end of it, you're equal parts entertained and wondering what the fuck did I just watch, especially when that clarinet starts playing again. I'm giving it a D+.
Wow. Okay, yeah, as far as Ultra Fight Victory, yeah, it is pretty much a YouTube video, just pretty much ripped off from their YouTube channel and just stuck on a DVD or a Blu-ray, for that matter, and then also was pretty much kind of like the Johnny Sacco movie and the Attack of the Super Monsters, which we're going to be doing in the next episode.
Yeah. Although we don't have the show of that, so I'm more than happy to at least have the movie.
Yeah. With that said, they should have just done this sort of upgraded version of Ultraman Victory just within the Ginga S show itself. Like, give him this sort of power kind of towards the end sort of thing, and then I'd just say this should not have existed at all, to be honest with you. it just should not have existed at all. And then, if this villain, the super duper Spectre ship man, whatever his name is, could have just replaced Dark Lugiel. You could have done that, because this guy would have been far better, and it seemed like he was far better compared to Dark Lugiel, and at least did something in a way compared to Dark Lugiel. Yeah, and also it just felt like a complete fan film, just solely focusing on Ultraman victory, just kind of giving him more of the spotlight sort of thing. But overall, this thing just should not have existed at all. So, with that, I'm just going to give it a GFA.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, again, I apologize if you're offended by language, but there are just some things, and I will continue to say this until, if the day ever comes, we get done messing with contemporary tokusatsu, or they change the formula at some point, where contemporary tokusatsu is concerning. And I just have a hard time watching it, because it tends to just punch itself in its own face a lot of times. And that's something the older stuff rarely ever did. I mean, yeah, I complained about Kamen Rider being formulaic and downright silly, but it was what it was, and it stuck to its own formula without bullshitting you or itself. It was disappointing at times, sure, and at times it didn't, live up to its potential in parts. But I feel like, to me, again, it didn't beat itself up.
To me, it sort of felt like it was trying to play it safe in a way, but then also
to some degree it was
around a bit too long.
Yeah, I mean, there are issues with it. I'm not letting it off the hook. But and I said this late last year too, going back, after looking at some of the more recent stuff we've done, Kamen Rider, despite some of its own problems, is looking better in retrospect compared to a lot of this newer stuff. And it's one thing I'm looking forward to Kamen Rider V3 when we cover that in June, July, whenever that's going to be here in a handful of months, because that's something I'm really genuinely anticipating, and I'm curious about. Like I told Jason, first and foremost, at least right now, I'm kind of tired of the shows because it's a lot of work. And then on top of that, I need a break from a lot of this newer stuff. And the thing that scares me is that there's still a lot of new stuff we got to cover still. And I'm just like, we're going to have to like space this stuff out, because otherwise I'm going to blow my damn brains out if we just like cover one new show after another, because like we did Ginga and then we did a bunch of Ginga S and Victory stuff. I'm just like, this is too much for one person to be handling. Like,
well, the one thing is that both of these shows were pretty much stuck into one DVD or Blu-ray set. So it's like, might as well just cover both of them and look, be done with it.
Yeah, it's just that, and I've sort of said this before too, I went in hoping for the best. I had high hopes. And I mean, look, Ginga was bad. Ginga S was pretty darn good. It had its own issues, but it was pretty good. The movie, slow middle, bad Elena character, but really fun. Victory fight, fee, fi, faux, fum, whatever. Like you said, it was not needed. To me, that's a pure example of just greed. Like, it's disappointing because, like, that's the reason why I'm so passionate. And again, here's me on my soapbox, probably repeating something I've said before again, where the reason why I'm passionate about this stuff is because I care. I want this stuff to matter. And when your writers or producers say otherwise, that not only makes me angry, but then it tells me that why should I care? Because you don't care. And then if I give you a bad grade, you should not care because you've told me you don't care about your own thing that I should care about. And just that's what's so disappointing because I love the original Ultraman. I've seen enough of like Ultraman's again. Okay, look, here's another thing I'm going to do. Ultra 7 in retrospect, I'm going to give a higher grade to. I was really hard on that when we covered it. What? Oh, dear God, was that both of 4 years ago now?
I think both of us were pretty hard. I think it may have been a bit longer than that, if I remember.
I think it was 4 years ago. And like I look back on that, I'm like, you know what? That was like fucking gold compared to a little bit of what we covered here and 2 weeks ago, and a few other things we've covered recently. And, you know, I'm sorry, Ultra 7. You're better than I gave you credit for at the time. But that's because I wasn't aware of all this other stuff. Like, this is my first time through the whole Ginga stuff. And
same here, too.
Like Ace, my son went through Ace over a period of a year and a half. From what I caught of that thing was really good. I started, and I keep forgetting if it's Taro or Leo. I started watching.
I know I've seen Leo many years ago when it was on Crunchyroll along with Ace.
I want to say it was Leo. I got through disc 1 of that a few years ago. I have yet to go back to it, but from what I did see, I really liked. I started Ultraman 80 2 years ago and finished the disc 1 of that. From what I saw, I really liked.
Yeah, and I've seen Ultraman 80 when it was on Crunchyroll too, and I finished that one many years ago. That was pretty good too.
Yeah, like there's some really good stuff here. And I know a lot of it was kind of formulaic, but you know what? There was differentiations with each new iteration that made it unique. It wasn't just necessarily the same thing, just with a new coat of paint on it. Like it had its own unique spin on things, and it wasn't overtly toyetic. And Toyota. See, look, I'm product placement. Logo Kaiju Show is brought to you by Toyota.
Not really.
No, it's not. But it just, again, I'm using the D word, disappointing. They're better than this. But at the same time, they aren't because they refuse to. Now, again, here's naive Kent again. Whenever we move forward with whatever the next thing is, whether it's Ultraman X, Geed Orb, whatever it is, for a contemporary Ultra series or one of the newer Kamen Rider stuff, I'm going to go in hoping for the best because I'm that dumb. I'm that naive. Like, I'm going to be like, oh, bye. Like, but look, again, this wasn't a complete and total waste of time because, like I said, Ginga S was good and its movie was pretty good. And yeah, there were problems, but yeah. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. And I'm looking forward to talking about Attack of the Super Monsters. I have seen that one twice before. That's an interesting one. I will say going into that one will be, I think, fun to talk about. But yeah.
Yeah, so again, if you see a subscribe button down below, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as smash the like button. And you can subscribe to any of our other streaming channels that you can see listed down below, as well as some of our social medias that you can see listed there. And you can watch both video and audio versions of our episodes right on our own website at gogokaijushow.com.
We hope you had fun, and we are looking forward to seeing you in 2 more weeks.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.